We all know that a fast way to learn is through negative and positive consequences for our actions. In scientific terms, this method is called operant conditioning, and it's when a connection is made between behavior and consequence. This type of conditioning is commonly used to train animals like dogs. By giving dogs treats when they sit, we're using operant conditioning to teach them that sitting is a favorable behavior. In the 1890s, Russian psychologist Ivan Pavlov noticed that there were some behavioral responses that his dogs had that he hadn't taught them. From this, he came up with the idea that dogs, and other animals, have reflex-like, hardwired responses that were unconditioned. He decided to conduct an experiment to prove this. In his experiment, he first started by demonstrating that every time he presented his dog with food, it would start to drool. When he recorded this, he thought he was done. But then he realized that after doing this test enough times, the dog would begin to drool as soon as the lab assistant who brought the food entered the room. Pavlov knew he had made a breakthrough, and so went further with his experiment. This time, each time he presented his dog with food, he would ring a bell. After a number of trials, Pavlov found that when he rung the bell without presenting the food, the dog would still drool. Pavlov called this association with involuntary behavior and stimuli classical conditioning. Now, years later, an American student named Esme Cammarata did this experiment with her own dogs. That's me, and here's my experience. Using my 3 dogs, I carried out a version of Pavlov's experiment. I noticed that when I fed my dogs, they would lick their lips and jump around. That is the unconditioned response to the unconditioned stimuli, which was them receiving and seeing the preparation of their food. The conditioned stimuli was the ringing of the bell. Once a day, when the dogs were fed, I rang the bell. I did this for about 2 weeks. When, at last, I rung the bell without the food, the dogs showed no response. They noticed the ringing, but didn't lick their lips or jump. They seemed confused. As this was obviously not the result I wanted, I continued on with my experiment for 1 more week. This time, when I rung the bell, they responded. I had successfully utilized classical conditioning to create a connection between stimuli and response. The reason for the delay in proper results was most likely due to not having carried out the trials for long enough. Pavlov's experiment demonstrated and proved the existence of classical conditioning, and through my experiment, I was able to see his discovery firsthand. Together with operant conditioning, classical conditioning became the foundation of a new school of psychology called behaviorism, which dominated psychology in the mid-20th century and continues to have a big impact on social sciences. The end.